Hey, let's switch it up today. I got a special video coming out in a couple of weeks I think y'all are going to like, and let's do some Max0r Bloodborne this time. Maybe skip an Elden Ring week, huh?
The video has spoilers. Bloodborne
Let's
is
do
a
this.
Lovecraftian
Spoiler alert.
horror RPG that no
Very
one understands by
Lovecraftian.
definition, where the player is free to attack hordes of
Tentacles
human
everywhere.
children at will and consume their innards. If that is
It's true, right? This game is like a special level of psychotic. Like all of the Soulsborne games have a little bit of crazy, but Bloodborne is like nonstop, like literal insanity. It's like the content is nuts.
in-depth and engaging anti-baby gameplay appeals to you, keep listening because it
does.
gets worse. In this game, you play as John Bloodborne, a foreigner incapable of speech without the
What was capable of speech? What was he? Elden John in Elden Ring?
use of sign language and stricken with Habsburg disease.
You see that he said use of sign language because your stuff, and then when he did that, it says "why" from YMCA. That was good. Habsburg disease.
Comes to the ancient city of London, seeking treatment for the sins of his cousins. In doing so, he will begin hallucinating talking dolls, spider people, and the great people. Journeying further, John Bloodborne becomes conscripted into the service of a gay elder god and the 60-year-old man he keeps as a pet, and is given the ultimate task of killing an invisible infant in order to cure his anemia. To accomplish said Herculean task,
Yeah, that's true. He's just like, I need more blood.
the player must journey through dark forests, terrifying nightmares, and the meth-ridden
look.
the ultimate task of killing an invisible infant in order to cure his anemia.
went
To
back too
accomplish
far.
said Herculean task, the player must journey through dark forests, terrifying nightmares,
How many times you backstab the giant pig right up the ass?
and the meth-ridden
That was
alleyways
worth
of a
going back.
post-Brexit Britain, slaying monsters, exploring, and tricking women into being impregnated by gods so you can consume the child. This game is an
That's like literally what happens, which is the craziest part. He's not just making up crazy shit.
excellent realization of a Metroidvania with something new around every corner. A great action RPG which pits you against insurmountable odds and extreme challenges, and has a gripping story and lore about discovering the Eldritch truth. So if you can,
Eldritch
play it
truth.
yourself, because I'm not going to hold back on the details. It's no secret that my reviews are entertainment first, so I don't suggest using me as genuine advice. However, most people can't play this game, ever, because you have to buy a $400 magical box sold by the wizard Sony in order to experience it. And
The only reason I own a PlayStation was to play this game, quite literally. I would not own a PlayStation right now if it wasn't for Bloodborne.
even then, you get to see it in an amazing
Although now I've been able to play The Last of Us and other games, God of War, things like that.
30 frames per second with no anti-aliasing. Port this game to PC, I beg of you. In fact,
And why don't they port it to PC? God, it's so annoying.
I can assume that a lot of people watching this video will basically never play the game, but keep watching because I'm hilarious and original. Do that, and I can give you the full, unfiltered, uncensored, unsubstantiated, and unsportsmanlike experience that is Bloodborne.
I consider myself, I'm the most knowledgeable person I know of anime and manga and stuff, and I never have any idea what his anime references are. He's like way deep in it. Part 1, the basics.
The gameplay is what makes this game great, and the easiest way to describe it is simple but complicated. On a simple level, your baby brain is responsible for only two tasks, dodging and hitting. And dodging in this game renders you temporarily invincible. Sounds easy, right?
That's
Well,
true.
Because every single enemy is adjusted to keep pace.
Do you ever think about that when they started making like probably Demon Souls, I guess would be like the first Soulsborne game. So when you roll, you become invincible, so you get your frames, right? I wonder if that was just like an accident, or if that was like exactly how it was intended to be, like not like fully like that. It's like they made one game and then they just kind of slightly improved and made changes and new storylines and stuff on everything else. But Demon Souls was just like, that was the game, like they from scratch.
Basic enemies are basically able to whoop your ass into fucking non-existence. Every encounter, therefore, is tense and engaging. When you kill someone, it's because you were faster and had more meth than they did. On a complicated level, you have a gun, and normally bullets hurt people, but in London, bullets are a suggestion, like the Geneva Convention. Here in England, it's all about the knife bins. Except when you shoot somebody mid-attack, you gain the mystical and arcane ability to plunge your fist through their ribcage like Mortal Kombat, and rip out their heart, which is considered rude and a slight annoyance. This extends to behind them if you charge an attack, which sometimes causes you to reach up a pig's asshole and rip out the prostate like fruit by the foot.
Do you know what? You know what happened? I didn't know that if you went up behind somebody and did a charge attack, that it would let you do the a visceral attack. I just didn't know that forever.
Side note, the most optimal farming route for
said
currency in
though.
this game is called Murgo's Pig Fisting Route. See, I changed the webpage. And in this route, you sneak up behind this guy and do him the dirty. Then entice these
Best farming spot in the game though, for real.
two swinular bastards to be
So early game, it's the two ogres or trolls or whatever that are just down from Central Yarnum, like very early game. And then here is a really good farming place, and then also those fucking sloppy guys upstairs at the like library place. Like those are the three places that I would hit up.
mauled out. You sneak up behind this guy and do him the dirty. Then entice these two swinular bastards to be mauled to death by members
bastards.
of Organization 13. Repeat 50 times. On a complicated level, every single weapon in the game has 2 different modes with 2 different movesets, and transforming between them gives you special attacks in addition to running attacks, plunging attacks, R1 attacks, punching attacks. On a theoretical physicist level, your character memorizes squiggly lines and fridge art created by gods.
Technically, it also took me forever to realize that you could swing and then change your weapon mode that would do a different secondary attack. Like, that's kind of complicated.
Passive bonuses that work regardless of weaponry. My favorites are more money, and more money. They stack. Finally, on a meta-theoretical chiropractic level, every weapon is customizable with different gem slots that give differing effects for your attacks. And there are different types that can literally change all of the stats of the weapon, like making a fucking spear do more damage based off of intelligence. There's definitely more and a lot of strategy in how you level up your character, but I assume that you know how to level up in a fucking video game. But with all this combat prowess, you may be wondering, Max0r, who are these crusty abominations that you're fighting on screen? Well, to learn that much, we're going to have to delve into the lore. So buckle your britches, bitches, because this shit is wild. If I say something questionable, just accept it as fact. I can be trusted. 60 years ago, 20 rowdy college students took their education extremely seriously because they found woman Cthulhu. She was just in a portable toilet downstairs. Also, because they were bored, they beat to death a god of the sea with some bats, but that's a story for later. It turns out the entire world is ruled and created by a race of elder gods beyond human comprehension called the Great Ones. Figuring this out, they got Cthulhu's blood and were like, we can make a religion out of this. Because it turns out the blood can heal people, which is really good due to all the knife crime.
Yeah,
so
but
everyone
what they didn't realize is that everybody was getting infected.
starts drinking it a little too much and they get the money to build 36 cathedrals, but it turns out eventually the blood turns you into a werewolf.
Oops.
So the church hires a guy named German to go fight the beasts with an organization known as the Hunters, but there's too many beasts, so he gives up. Now the knife crime is increased even more, and German sort of goes insane and creates a life-size doll of one of his students who is an 8-foot-tall Amazonian. He also canonically has sex with it. The moon god, for some reason, kind of takes notice of this and is like, alright, listen, I'm building a suicide squad. I will bring your waifu to laifu if you serve me for all time as my slave. German reasonably thinks that this is a great deal and is imprisoned in a dream. This is where you come in. See, the moon god assassinates baby gods for fun, but needs a hitman to go into the real world to do it since he's confined to the 9th dimension. So in addition to fighting all manner of giant beasts and uncovering dark secrets, the true aim of this game is to commit infanticide. There's enough bullshit here to fill tax legislation, so comment your own.
It's a complicated storyline, like, but in the end, that's the point, is go kill that baby.
Poorly summarized Bloodborne lore below. And for the rest of us non-shills, we have ample time to explain more of what makes this game great.
Part 2, prepare
Yes,
to
you have been jinxed. I am talking about bosses before I talk about the levels. In most video games, bosses cap off areas, but in Bloodborne, areas are preambles to a dick flattening, and nothing will challenge your skill in quite the same way. Except for the goddamn witches
orphan.
of Hemwick, who were placed into the game for disability access. You can probably tell that Bloodborne
Hey, there's always one though too, right? Like in most games, there's just like you're playing and all the bosses are hard. You finally get to the next boss. You're like, oh shit, here we go. And then you one shot it, and you're like, what in the fuck? Like, why was this here?
hard game. We don't even know if a games journalist can beat it. But it's hard in a fair way that tests your skills and reaction time, except for Lawrence, but I'll get back to Lawrence later. What sets this game's bosses apart is that the challenge makes it feel like you're a really small dude jabbing a toothpick into a building-sized deer demon. So yeah, I would be impressed if you killed that. But not only that, unlike Dark Souls, every single boss reacts meaningfully to how you attack them. Large beasts can have their bones cracked and their tendons wound into a slinky.
True.
Bone boys can be knocked over and have their marrow shipped. And
He's given a really good point here. Yeah, Dark Souls is kind of lame. Like, don't take that out of context. But when you're fighting giant things and you're whacking at angles all the time, like, you kind of get annoyed with it. I've always said that, well, I haven't always said, ever since I played Demon Souls, I thought that the Demon Souls bosses, they were so incredibly gimmicky, and I loved it. Like I loved everything about those bosses because they were just like shit would happen, or you had to find some weird way. It was just like a fun experience. And Bloodborne is, he's right. You can break things, and the bosses react and they change and stuff like that. There's some in Elden Ring, like the fire giant. You notice that his leg is broken, so you can bust that, break his leg, and he rips it off and all that stuff, right? But in like Dark Souls, you just don't get that as much.
Human enemies will wince and recoil when they see your height difference. As well, every boss punishes you for cowardice and actively discourages backpedaling with their forward momentum, causing every fight to be an elaborate dance with a thrilling back and forth. Unless you're fighting Rom, who is the really hungry caterpillar if he had a legion of arachnid slaves who threw their heads underground like ostriches. We don't talk about him. And while we're on the subject of bad bosses, this motherfucker, let me tell you something, the humanoid bosses in this game are paradoxically the most dangerous. But Mikolash is a psychological hazard that will hurt you personally. This boss literally feels like cut content because the fight centers around chasing him, and his direction depends on RNG, making him an actual speedrun killer. When you corner him, he uses one attack, and then you chase him again, where he gains the power to insta-kill you. God forbid you're hit by it, because that's 10 minutes gone. Here's a tip. Save up 10 poison knives and steal from your family if you must. Then wait until he jumps down this hole, poison him repeatedly, and watch him spaz the fuck out until death. You will thank me. But
hey, no, that's not bad. That's a really good strategy. I mean, if you're cheesing somebody, whatever. But that's solid.
As a result of everyone who isn't Miko shit, conquering a boss in this game is absolutely rewarding on a level that other games cannot match. It's only because the odds are stacked against you in ways that don't feel bullshit most of the time that conquering them is the main reason I play. And their fights are undoubtedly the best I've ever done in video games. But that is...
He's just kind of parroting like all reviews of all FromSoft games at this point, where it's like, it's incredibly difficult, but fair.
Most of the time in the game. In fact, a lot of your time is spent exploring the areas, so let's get into that. Lesson 1 in area design. Where the fuck am I going? Exploration is the name of the game, except it's called Bloodborne. Only this time, you don't bring smallpox and kill 20 million people. We're looking at a solid 10 this time, because the main enemies in this game are British townspeople. It's how the developers made sure you didn't feel bad about killing them. The plague of beasts infecting London causes people's teeth to become beast-like, makes you aggressive at night, and slurs your speech. So it's up to you to stop them as a hunter should. If you don't look up where to go next in this game, good fucking luck. People get lost all the time. Get used to it. This game doesn't do
and you can try to like go different areas and stuff and just be screwed.
Exploration, like, oh look, there's loot in this hallway. My dopamine's gonna.
You know what the worst one for FromSoft is when you can go multiple directions, which you usually can. But if you ever play Demon Souls, you have like 4 routes to go immediately, and you don't really know which to go. You could play that game, I mean, like 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, like do the math, right? There's hundreds of routes to play the game in to actually finish it. It's kind of crazy.
Go crazy. That's baby shit. This is Daddy's exploration, where you find a route back to a place you were in 10 hours ago. And I hope you weren't expecting a mini-map or any map. Every single hallway is a rabbit hole of discovery, and your hand isn't held. Case in point, Cathedral Ward is a level, but feels like a hub area because it connects to fucking everything. And where you start the game is in the middle of a loop-de-loop involving torturous experimentation. Just look at the fucking map of this game. Everything overlaps. And yes, there is a level called Nightmare Lecture Hall, and no, it does not connect to the Altar of Despair, although you would think that. Fittingly, the lecture hall is the smallest area, and more fittingly, 90% of the combat is graduates throwing cum at you. The game also has 2 completely secret areas that you would not find without the internet. I would tell you how to enter, but I don't want to do completely secret areas that you would not find without the internet. I would tell you how to enter.
I didn't cheat. You can watch my playthrough. I did not go look anything up. I just played the game. The only help I needed is I had no idea how to get to the DLC, and I knew I owned it. I was like, I cannot figure this shit out. I had to go ask online how to find the DLC. Other than that, I think I made it through pretty much 100% of the game, and I think a lot of other people did too.
But I don't want to do calculus. And what you get at the end? Upper Cathedral Ward is legitimately a horror area in a game loved for its combat, because it's filled with enemies who act out my...
Also, because I didn't look things up, I stood next to this guy doing signs and shit for like an hour, and I never figured that out.
greatest fears, stealing currency
hate those
permanently.
guys.
Gives me fucking chills every time I talk about it. Castle Canehurst is proof that From Software hates us all, since the best area in the entire game requires you to go to the Field of Corn in Ohio and trek down Waldo. But it's worth it to invade the house of that parasitic queen dwelling in her demented castle, so that she may feel
this
the
one
wrath
wasn't
of
hard
the
to find.
proletariat. All we have to do is kill Prince Philip, who guards the way as an eternal lich. On top of this, there are numerous NPCs and NPC quest lines spread throughout the world, all with a series of interactions with each other depending on location and timing. For instance, you could direct nuns, prostitutes, and Prince Philip to a church run by a lonely black sludge. Then
The lonely black sludge there, I murdered in my playthrough on accident because I thought it was an enemy. And so I ended up having to send everybody to Yusefka's clinic. I had all sorts of alien goober heads, and I thought it was fun.
Perform enough blood transfusions to send the nun into a yandere rage. Or you could direct them to the nice woman who runs the clinic down the street, who only wants to help and assist others. Then take a strange path through the forest and into her clinic to discover that she's been experimenting on all of them in order to create the Blue Man Group. And if you want, you can take the umbilical cord away from her schizophrenic ass and eat it. The sky's the limit in Bloodborne questlines. And you know what my favorite questline is? The one where you descend into literal hell, complete with eternal punishment, insanity, and femboy fishing, the scariest of them all. I'm of course talking about the DLC, the only DLC for this game. And if you play through Bloodborne, you have to play through the
best DLC
I'm not
like
giving you
any
a fucking
game I've ever
choice.
played.
So to learn why, you should play the best expansion ever made since Spore Galactic Adventures.
Jungles.
Come with me on this amazing journey to find the secrets of the Bloodborne, the Old Hunters.
I love the DLC. Yes, part 3. It's really good.
I want you to imagine
Best
hell.
DLC
Now
ever.
imagine hell written by H.P. Lovecraft. It would be filled with squids, immigrants, and air conditioning. This DLC has none of that.
This was a particularly triggering scene here. Watching the background here where he runs past
Lovecraft. It
Shotgun
would
Guy.
be filled
How many times did I have to run past this fucker to go fight Leonard? God, it was awful.
with
Leonard?
squids,
That's his
immigrants,
name, right?
and air conditioning. This DLC has none of that except the squids. For you see, those college
Orphan of
kids from the
Causes,
lore
pure
section of
pain,
the
though,
video
too.
were built fucking different. They experimented on an entire village and possibly beat up a god of the sea so fucking
I don't think
bad
I
that
ever
her
beat one of in the village there, the fishing village. I don't think I ever beat one of those giant shark dudes.
consciousness in the 9th dimension died. We spent
That's
an
the
entire
true
game
boss of the
killing an
game.
infant, and these guys somehow killed the MILF god. But anyways, in the process of this, it cursed them and all of the hunters to be doomed to a hell upon death, where they will hunt in a bloodthirsty rage without rest for all eternity, indistinguishable from a political subreddit. Case in point, this is Ludwig. He's the first boss of the DLC and has a reputation for causing refunds. Not because he's bad, but because he's too good for you. The first phase is as difficult for me as realizing that Golden Corral is not actually a real corral. But like every restaurant except Golden Corral,
There's a sneaky amount of summons for Ludwig also. Depending on like what you're wearing and who you can summon outside there. Ended up playing that game for a bit, and I think I kind of got lucky on it. But I think there's 3 different people that you can summon in groups of like up 1 or 2.
the rewards at the end are delicious because his second phase is even harder. Now, I'm not going to lie, this DLC has 4 bosses and 3 of the hardest bosses I have ever fought in any video game ever.
Yeah.
So, your ass will be clenched the entire time, and the fact that he's the 3rd hardest is fucking concerning. Some people tell me, Max0r, your videos have gotten me through tough times because they made me laugh. But like this boss, you are the one who is truly overcoming these challenges, and I believe in your ability to beat both of them.
good.
King,
Good at
boss lightning round, the challenges, and I believe in
What
your
did that
ability
say?
to beat both of them. King.
Or queen, but a woman was actually given the title of king in Polish history, so it also counts queen. Also, everyone who is non-gender binary is a monarch. Shipping cost may apply.
Boss Lightning Round. The DLC has many such cases of amazing bosses, including Lady Maria, who is the
She
basis
was
for
hard.
German's extremely creepy 8-foot-tall doll fetish, but we'll get back to that. And Orphan of
I
Cause, who
didn't
was
catch that
born from the
storyline.
literal dead body of a god. If you enjoy the sensation of being beaten to death with a sharpened placenta, this is the fight for you. And as with everything that From Software makes,
So
they threw
crazy.
in a boss that they didn't really finish and called it a day. I'm of course talking about Lawrence, which is a very mundane name
Oh,
for a
Lawrence! I said Leonard like an idiot. Lawrence.
Monster locked in hell. Take my advice, don't fight Lawrence, you only lose a part of yourself. Since this boss fights you by dropping off his own legs and then violently vomiting and shitting lava everywhere. I've always wanted my game about dynamic dodging and elaborate fencing to be reduced to shitty area denial like it's Team Fortress 2. To wrap things up,
what's he complaining about? That was a good boss. It was hard, but it was good.
This game is pretty good, but the DLC music is fucking insane. I don't know what it is about Japanese composers being able to make better symphonies than the continent that invented them, but just take a listen.
Well, maybe probably hundreds of years in between, I would say. The ability to write things down and learn and improve.
Holy shit, I am alive right now. Have you ever thought, as I do, that this game is just too good? That you would really rather be playing a shittier version of the game, such as the engagement of the Chalice Dungeons? I, of course, jest. They're fine, probably, except for half of them, because Bloodborne has an optional system of infinite dungeon generation for all of those who wish to break free of the shackles of good level design. Let's talk about how, and more importantly, why.
True. Man, I've never played a procedurally generated level, like a game that just relies on that. That's been top notch. This is gonna be a hot take. Minecraft Dungeons, I think, has the best generation of levels of all games. But I think just the nature of it's 2D-ish gameplay, is why it works. But other than that, I usually get really bored with them really fast because it's too hard to make the levels generated like that, but also be unique and interesting.
First of all, Bloodborne has a system of dungeons that everyone shares and dungeons that are random. For my footage, I played the shared dungeons that you can be guaranteed the pain you witness on screen is mandatory. One of the biggest strengths of Bloodborne is the ability to have interesting and challenging enemy encounters gently rubbed with the blood-stained hands of Miyazaki. But I don't think I have to explain to you how randomizing almost every encounter in the game could be imbalanced. But fortunately, most enemies you encounter in the Chalice dungeons are new to spare British people your wrath, so you instead fight SCP-96.
It is really good that they have new content in there because you play the whole game and then you're just okay, let's go to this weird multiplayer procedurally generated Chalice dungeon, whatever junk, and it turns out it's legitimately new content, so it's pretty good.
Why are we here? It turns out that the entire city of London was built on a Celtic burial ground, an ancient civilization called the Sumerians who discovered the healing powers of blood and then mysteriously disappeared. Wow, I wonder what happened. This is all cool in theory, but the reality is that most of the time you fight the same 4 enemies, and the first 3 dungeons can be replaced by Simon Says. My cat literally wouldn't notice. The Chalice dungeons are so forgotten that the developers use them to put joke enemies into the game. My favorite is the man who aggressively rolls at you stark naked wearing only his Nikes. The uniqueness also extends to the bosses, and they're actually pretty cool, like Tumerian Descendant, Watchdog, and the 3 overweight men. Do you remember that basic enemy from 2 levels? He is the boss now. Rom, he is the boss again. The only thing stopping me from throwing myself into a wood chipper is the fact that Mikolash isn't back. And if you're going to have replays, you probably want to make sure that they're actually good. In fact, the bosses are so fucking imbalanced that the Watchdog fight is primarily comprised of instant kill attacks. I beat Sekiro backwards on a keyboard and this shit is too fucking much. Now normally that would be all, but the dungeons go deeper. What we have discussed so far is merely the surface, and there's a much darker syndicate lying just below. These places you must never venture, for they are the save edit dungeons, whereby through wizardry the community are able to conjure up deep dark chasms and share them with the rest of the world. Of these secrets, there are only 2 that I shall reveal to you, and the first is the Cum Dungeon. Yes, you heard that correctly and clearly. The Cum Dungeon is the name of the most optimal farming route ever conceived by the fucking cricket people who do this shit, whereby the player enters the chasm of place name and watches as a high-level boss yeets itself off a cliff. Murgo's pig fisting route can give you 10,000 echoes. This gives 83,000. And if you thought that sorcery was bad, it gets much worse. You can insert anything from the game files by save editing a Chalice dungeon. Anything. This includes cut and unfinished content from the game that the developers forgot to delete. Like this dog.
Why does that happen? Well, I'm asking why, but I know the answer. You spend a ton of time working on a game. You have content. They're okay, we're not going to put that in the game. It actually takes time to go delete it, which makes no sense. There's no reason to do it, no valid reason. And I love it, especially because these games are so good. There's tons of cut content, and people like Vati Vidya, who he just referenced here in this video, like you could find like good lore and interesting information and stuff like that. Like I really love it. There's a bunch of good like Elden Ring cut content, like full quest lines and stuff that they just chopped out. That it kind of sucks that they did that. But I get it. You know, you have to make the game.
Who attacks you with invisible lightning. Overall, the Chalice dungeons are bad. They're not actually very fun to play, and yet I love them. Everyone loves them because they allow us to further explore a long-dead game with the help of a passionate community. Now, before we sign off, I know what you're thinking.
That was surprisingly serious from him.
Max0r, what about the multiplayer? That I would love to talk about with all the footage I have, but it's dead. If this game releases on PC, and it better, then I will talk about the multiplayer extensively. And finally, this game and this video would not be complete if I didn't talk about the hunter's dream. After all the combat, the battles, and the difficulty of this game, it's nice to have a place to recharge, purchase items, upgrade weapons, and watch as it violently burns to the ground. This is where you'll find German slowly wasting away as his soul remains captive for an eternity, and his doll waifu that he sold his existence to be with. She talks to you, levels you up, offers you advice, and German says you're allowed to have sex with her. When I fell down and felt defeated, she was there to pick me up. When I emoted at her randomly, she pretended to be impressed. And she was there, graciously standing in the background of this one shot that I took of myself. She is our waifu now, and the game is perfect and complete because she is in it. Now excuse me as I engage in the supplementary lore material. Should you get the game, yes, absolutely, I am biased. In fact, you should physically enter Sony's headquarters and demand that it be ported to PC. I will be right there with you. Tasers will not stop me. I would like to thank the corrupt hackers and politicians funneling money into this channel directly from the taxpayer.
I should go play Bloodborne again. All right, guys. Well, thanks. See you later. Bye.